Distinguished guests, 3 months ago I was privileged enough to join 1,600 of the world's most qualified climate experts at a summit in Copenhagen. We were there to update the climate science ahead of the crucial climate negotiations that will occur in Copenhagen at the end of this year. The latest science presented at this conference was anything but reassuring. The science had three devastating conclusions. The first is that we're currently on a pathway that exceeds the worst case scenario of the IPCC. That's the worst case. The second conclusion is that climate change and the impacts that are happening as a result of it are happening faster than we predicted. And the third is that there's now little time left to avoid what is fast developing as a planetary catastrophe. One of the most striking examples that underpin these conclusions is the latest science from the Arctic. There, sea ice the size of Australia is melting so fast that it's likely to disappear within the next few years. There's not been an ice-free Arctic for over 1 million years. And even under the worst-case scenario of the IPCC, this same sea ice was meant to be with us until the end of this century. Now, apart from tragically dooming polar bears and the unique Arctic ecosystem, these changes have important consequences for further accelerating global climate change because a sea without ice will absorb far more energy than one that is icy and bounces energy back into space. There are even more worrying changes going on in the polar region now. Once thought to be an outside possibility, the great landlocked ice sheets of the Western Antarctic and Greenland are now beginning to melt at a furious rate. And as they melt, scientists are now predicting that sea levels will rise around the planet by a minimum of 1 metre, probably 2 to 3 metres. Now, 2 to 3 metres of sea level rise around the planet is a civilization wrecker. It will devastate the homes and livelihoods of hundreds of millions of people in the coastal areas of the world. It will destroy most airports and shipping facilities. It will flood almost all major cities and devastate entire economies. The rapid changes in the Earth's climate system are not just located in the polar regions. In Australia, we're privileged to have the world's largest coral reef ecosystem, and this is a system that I've spent my entire life studying. It's also an engine of the Australian economy. It brings in over $5 billion each year in tourist revenue. It's Queensland's second largest employer and actually employs 63,000 people. But like the Arctic's summer ice, the Great Barrier Reef is now slipping away. Rapidly warming tropical oceans are threatening this great ecosystem. And in 1979, mass coral bleaching events began to occur and kill corals throughout the world, including the Great Barrier Reef. And so far, we've lost 30%. Now, if you take the scientific consensus, we will lose the Great Barrier Reef if we continue to let the oceans warm and acidify. Now, as Robin has stressed, this isn't fly-by-night hokey science. This is not journalistic spin. This is good old, carefully collected scientific information published in the best journals, peer-reviewed. It's a consensus of hundreds of experts, so it should be listened to. The changes that we see going on in Australia go well beyond our national treasures. As we tragically saw earlier this year, climate change can have devastating consequences on people, families, and infrastructure. The extreme fires and floods in February of this year destroyed over $1.5 billion of property and tragically ended the lives of hundreds of Australians during conditions which are described by the Australian Bureau of Meteorology as having no precedent in Australian history. They've never been seen before. As we push the climate outside its safety zone, we expose ourselves to greater risk of these extreme events. Already our emergency services and our insurance industries are beginning to face situations that have them stretched to the limit. So with this growing evidence of an unmanageable situation developing after less than 1 degree of global warming, the key question becomes, can we survive a global temperature that is set to increase under the current scenario by tenfold? So it gets 10 times worse. Can we hope to survive a climate that's unlike anything we've seen on this planet in 20 million years? You don't have to go far to find societies that are already succumbing to climate change. In our region, Pacific and Southeast Asian nations are already struggling against rising seas, catastrophic storms, and devastating floods. We recently did a study of the exposure of Southeast Asian nations to climate change, and the results were quite alarming. Even under moderate climate change, an estimated 50 million people will become homeless as sea levels rise, food security plummets, and coastal areas are inundated and destroyed. And you don't have to be a political genius to realise that this will pose great logistic, ethical, and potentially explosive regional issues. To think that Australia can hunker down and ignore these catastrophic developments borders on foolhardy. That said, how far and how quickly do we need to act? Atmospheric carbon dioxide is currently increasing at the rate of 2 parts per million per year. At this rate, we'll be at catastrophic levels, catastrophic climate change within 20 to 30 years. It's sobering to realise that we're probably already at an unsustainable level of carbon dioxide. We're already committed to the loss of the Arctic ecosystem and most of the Great Barrier Reef. We're already committed to some stern challenges over the coming decades. Given the dire circumstances and uncertainties that lie ahead, there's no other answer to the question about how far and how quickly we need to act. The answer is we need to do all that's possible to bring CO2 emissions to zero within the next decade or face catastrophic circumstances. Only this will bring us back to a safe climate. A safe climate is a climate in which our exposure to extreme events is minimised. It's a climate in which our businesses grow and prosper. And it's a climate in which our homes, our families, our cities, our children and grandchildren are secure. The good news is that there is a pathway to a safe climate. There are proven technologies and an abundant source of energy that beams down on our planet each day. This source of energy, the sun, exceeds the entire global energy demand of our planet by 10,000 times. It's there for the taking. All we need to do is to act. And that's why we're here today. I'm very happy to stand together with this enormous crowd of motivated and talented individuals, with these brave runners and with the great and honourable Al Gore at the launch of Safe Climate Australia. I'm also proud to be here as an Australian in an initiative that is sweeping across our planet and transforming our world. For too long, we've ignored the threat of climate change and we've let the solutions that were there languish. For too long, we've walked down the wrong track. But not today. Today, with the launch of Safe Climate Australia, we'll begin the process of confronting and defeating the climate change problem. And hopefully, you will be inspired to join us on this great journey. After all, few issues could be more important for our people and our nation. Thank you.